Dark, disturbing, sick, and twisted. These are just a couple of the words that I would use to describe this episode of Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury.
Powerful Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby. Greetings, fellow Gundam fans, and welcome to a very special review of The Witch from Mercury, an episode which is going to leave a lot of people pretty damn disturbed. That's because this episode is pretty important, because it's the end of the first half of the series as it goes on a break and we return to the next half, which will supposedly wrap up this entire storyline. And this one right here, I have to say, was pretty fucked up. I think it goes without saying that the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise does not shy away from the realities of war itself. I mean, war inherently is going to involve people fighting, and people are going to die. And they definitely fucking die in this episode. Interestingly enough, this episode didn't have any massive revelations. There were no big reveals, there were no secrets which were given to the audience. It looks like a lot of those elements of the story are going to be saved for the next half of the series. This episode was all about the brutality itself and how war can quite literally transform super nice, loving, caring people into killing machines. Run away, gain 1, move forward, gain 2. It's been one of the biggest phrases of The Witch from Mercury, something that's been beaten into Suleta's head from her mother, and we really get to see that come to a head in this episode as Suleta is forced into a situation where she has to kill or be killed. And while it does lead to a really triumphant moment of getting to see the brand new Aerial Gundam with some cool new upgrades, in fact, I believe it goes by the name of the Aerial Gundam Rebuild. Real creative name, by the way, guys. But we also get to see the price that Suleta is going to have to pay for saving her friends, and if it involves absolutely just demolishing someone with one swift movement of her mobile suit's hand, well, that's what she's going to do. Really, though, this episode can be boiled down to one simple word: chaos. That's exactly what's going on here, as the Dawn of Fold has infiltrated the Keita plant and they're trying to take out Delling Rembrandt. Of course, this involves a lot of other mobile suits coming out and going into some big epic battles that, of course, we as Gundam fans love to see, but there's a lot of shocking things in this episode, so let's go ahead and break down some of the biggest elements. First and foremost, I want to talk a little bit more about Sophie Poloni, who is just an absolutely terrifying character. She's so enamored at finding Suleta, but she almost outright kills her at the very beginning of the episode before continuing their mission to pretty much destroy all of the escaped transports on this ship. Their plan is not to let anyone escape, and they're just wanting to kill Delling, and this is going to be very difficult, as Delling and his entire organization have a lot of mobile suits at their disposal, but the fact of the matter is, the Dawn of Fold has a couple of Gundams, and they are incredibly powerful, and getting to see Sophie and Noria battle in their distinctive Gundams against all the other various mobile suits in this episode is explosive and awesome. I love the use of their weapons, I love the fact that they have basically giant Gatling guns, and I also really like the fact that they bring up that everyone from Earth is using physical ammunition. Physical weapons, that is to say they're not using beam technology, and this actually adds a little bit more to the conflict between the Earthians and the Spatians, because of course everyone from space feels that if they're using physical ammunition, they're basically polluting everything, including the vastness of space itself, whereas everyone from Earth realizes that the Spatians themselves are the ones who ruined Earth in the first place and fled all the way to space. Again, it's doing a great job of building up what the conflict is between these various groups, but ultimately it's not the meat and potatoes of this episode. This one really is all about the survival of Suleta, her friends, and Miarine. And it really gets crazy by the middle of the episode, as we get to see a lot of really great mobile suit action, but I think the scene that honestly hit me one of the hardest had to be Gwail Jeddirk, as of course he was a part of that group whose ships were stolen, their mobile suits were taken by the Dawn of Fold, and this really pisses off Gwail's father Vim, to the point where he decides to actually go out in his very own personalized Delonza mobile suit himself to take care of some business, because this guy is hardcore. If it means going into the front lines to fight, he's gonna do it, and in some senses, I have to command some respect for the character for actually doing this. He's not just a coward who's going to try and run away. Yes, Vim might be one of the biggest douchebags of the series, but he certainly does seem to have some sort of sense of honor. despite the fact that he's been trying to kill Delling this entire time. The point is, he goes after the Dawn of Fold and the ship that was carrying all of their mobile suits, which just so happens to have his son Gwael inside of it, and Gwael, being the character that he is, decides to take one of these mobile suits to try and find Suletta, but instead he ends up running into his father, and they end up having a mobile suit battle, a battle that he does not want to have because he simply cannot communicate with him, and it leads to one of the most disturbing scenes of the episode, where Gwael has no choice but to fight back and defend himself against his father, and it ends up resulting in him outright killing him by taking one of his bladed weapons and jamming it directly into his cockpit. And at the very last second, you get to realize that he knows what he's doing. His father realizes that his son is the one who just finished him off, and what might be one of the most sad scenes of the episode, you even get to see that Vim is a little elated over the fact that his son is indeed safe, before eventually his mobile suit explodes. And then you just have Gwael, who essentially just loses it at this moment. I cannot wait to see how they're going to handle his character in the future of the series after this event, and how it's going to actually steer him, because I don't know if this means he's going to continue to pursue Suletta, or if he's going to want to try and go up against her, or maybe do his very own thing. This is something that's going to twist and warp his mind, and it immediately makes him, I think, one of the more interesting characters of the series. I already liked him before. He started out as like a stock bully villain, but this is going to change him and deepen him into something else that we haven't seen quite yet, and I'm very pumped for all of that. We also have another really great scene where we get to see that everyone from the Earth House is freaking out after this huge battle that's going on. They're trying to escape, and it looks like they're about to be completely destroyed by the Earth Gundams, when suddenly we get to see that Nika uses a call sign on their ship, which lets Sophie know that they're actually a part of their organization. And it seems like at first she does this secretly, but of course Martin notices this, and we don't get any answer to what happens after this. He realizes that Nika is actually working against them the entire time, and again, this is just another plot thread which is going to be brought into the next part of the series. But of course, one of the biggest things about this episode is we get to see that both Suletta and Miorine have been separated. We saw that at the end of the last episode, with Miorine desperately trying to escape, and she ends up running into her father, who ends up getting severely injured in this episode with a massive piece of shrapnel getting stuck in his back, and rather than leave him dead, she actually decides to help him out. Again, I think this is just another demonstration of showing how far Miorine's respect for her actual father has come, and you even get to see that she's even more conflicted when in this moment he doesn't try to save himself, he just simply wants Miorine to be safe, and this is all advice that came from her mother. And we have to remember that Miorine has certainly had some parental issues, especially when regards to her mother and father, and in particular her mother, so this was a pretty chilling moment for her character. And then we have Suletta, who is truly the star of this episode, as she's desperately trying to make her way to her mother and the aerial Gundam, only to be confronted by a bunch of Dawn of Fold soldiers which are getting ready to basically blast her to pieces, when suddenly at the last second she is saved by her mother. And in this moment, Suletta is horrified at the prospect that her mother actually killed people, although her mother, being the sweet talker that she is, reassures Suletta that she did this in order to save her life. Again, bringing back the old phrase of run away, gain 1, move forward, gain 2. Suletta's mother gives her a heartfelt talk, telling her that she needs to get into the aerial Gundam to protect her friends. It's not a matter of just outright killing people, she has to fight in order to protect people, and if that means making a sacrifice, she's just going to have to do it. I absolutely loved the symbolism of this scene too, where when they were talking to each other, there was all of this blood that was splattered on the ground in between them. Essentially, this was the line that Suletta was going to have to cross in order to make these decisions, and she does that. She makes her way to the hangar, she gets into the brand new rebuild version of the aerial Gundam, and immediately has an epic battle. And this is definitely one of the best mobile suit battles from the entire series. Fast, fluid, hard-hitting, explosive, lots of beam saber action, really big explosions, not to mention this brand new version of the aerial Gundam has a really big fucking gun. It's actually made up of all of the various bits, basically transforming into like a massive beam cannon. It's incredibly powerful and incinerates anything that it touches, and rather than be horrified by this weapon, Sophie is actually kind of surprised and excited at actually seeing it. She's just so obsessed with Suletta that she's excited to see her do anything in the aerial Gundam. And just at that moment when it seems like all is lost, reinforcements arrive, and it looks like the Dawn of Fold is going to have to retreat. To me, this was surprising, as I felt this was going to lead to some sort of status quo change or maybe some sort of revelation, but no, basically they're continuing to tease what these characters are going to do for the future, but it's inevitable that these characters are going to have another confrontation at some point. So that's it. The episode just kind of ends there, but of course there is a post-credit scene, and it's without a doubt the highlight of the episode, as it's incredibly disturbing and might feature one of the most violent death scenes that I've seen from the entire Gundam franchise. So Miorine is desperately trying to escape with her father to get him some help when suddenly she's met by some random Donna-fold soldier who is getting ready to kill Delling, when suddenly Suletta arrives in the aerial Gundam, just ripping through the walls, making her way in, and rather than just bat this soldier away, she straight up goes attack on Titan on his ass, just slamming her hand down on this soldier, basically just obliterating his body as he explodes into a massive flurry of blood. This scene visibly left me shook. I was terrified at this scene for a number of reasons. One, it was incredibly sudden. Two, it was insanely violent. And three, Suletta was very proud of herself in this moment. The fact that she made this split-second decision to absolutely just murder this guy in the most violent way possible just to save her friend. She even falls out of the cockpit being all goofy, silly, and adorable, not realizing what she truly has done at this moment as she reaches out with bloody hands towards Miorine, who is only completely terrified at seeing her brand new friend turn into a murderer. And that's where it ends! What the fuck? I gotta say, this was a bold decision. They're gonna leave us with this scene to brew on until we get to the next part of the series, and it's one of the most fucked up things that I've ever seen. Like I said, we've seen disturbing scenes in the Gundam anime franchise before, especially when it comes to the deaths of major characters. But this one was just outright wrong, in my opinion. It felt dirty and just not right. It's different when you see two mobile suits fighting. It's a completely different story when you see a giant robot completely crush a human with its very own giant robotic hand, and done in such a bloody fashion. And of course, it's going to create a massive divide between Suletta and Miorine, as now it looks like their entire relationship is going to completely reset and go in an entirely different direction. Suletta, of course, seems to have no problem with what she's done, as she's so dedicated to her mother and her teachings that what she felt that she did was the right thing to do. Killing this person to save Miorine was simply just a part of the mission. She decided to move forward. She wanted to gain too. And what it resulted in is going to be one of the most messed up scenes from the entire series. I cannot stress how shocking it really was when I watched this. I visibly let out like a shriek when I was watching this. I had to pause the episode and come to terms with what I had actually just seen. It really was chilling. And it's so strange because for the last couple of years, we've had nothing but spin-offs. Stuff like Gundam Build Fighters and Divers and all those other things. And they didn't even have anything close to this type of thing. So this was like tonal whiplash of going from those series to this one right here. Basically, this episode made me feel dirty. I felt like I needed a shower after watching this episode. It just felt sick and wrong in the worst ways possible. For people who are feeling that this was going to go in a different direction for when it started out dark and went to a more, happy-go-lucky school setting, don't worry. This is a more traditional Gundam, and in many ways it decided to go in a more gnarlier direction than some of the previous iterations of the series. And it also looked really good while it was doing it. This was an episode which was filled to the brim with lots of really good, intense mobile suit action, and for people who are into that type of thing, which I'd wager are most Gundam fans already, you're definitely going to get some enjoyment out of it. But again, this episode gets to the heart of it all, the characters and the decisions that they have to make, and the decisions that they're going to have to live with. I think the most fascinating thing about this episode yet again has got to be the relationship between Suletta and her mother, as it's very obvious that her mother is using her for something. I don't know what that is, but she's clearly manipulating her for some sort of grand plan, and she seems to have no problem with allowing her daughter to do these things, and I'm sure that's going to come with some sort of massive revelation in the next part of the show, but that's still a mystery. It's up for debate, and people are going to come up with their very own theories and thoughts. And most importantly, that's really what I want to hear from you guys. This episode just shook me to my core, but I want to know how it affected you guys. What did you think about this big episode that's going to leave us on a massive bloody cliffhanger, and what's it going to lead into the future of the next part of The Witch from Mercury? What are you hoping to see? What do you think is going to happen with Suletta and Miorine? Is Suletta's mother really have noble ambitions, or does she have more revenge-filled, evil-type ideals? What is your hopes and dreams for the future of the series? Let's talk about those, this episode, and everything else. For those who've been watching these reviews, I thank you so much. I love talking about Gundam, I love watching this show, and I'm most definitely going to talk about the next half of the series when it does drop, so I'm very excited for all of that. There's also a lot of other big anime series which have just started in this winter 2023 season, and a lot of them that I definitely want to look at. Just to name a few, I really want to check out the brand new Trigun, not to mention, of course, the anime adaptation of Nier Automata, and maybe a few other surprises. But if there's any shows you guys think that I should check out, I'd love to hear about those too in the comments. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.